Why there's a meaning crisis is because people have sort of like gone out of touch with religion, and that provided like a structural like framework for people to live.
Yeah.
But also now you're saying the meaning of life is to like follow your duties and responsibilities. First of all, work those out, how to do it, and then do it.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand a bit more about like where those duties and responsibilities come from. Does it come from religion, or is it something you create yourself?
To be honest, I'm not too sure. I think obviously if you're a religious person, then you might get some guidance from your religion in terms of where, like, what path you're supposed to go down. Again, I think it is very subjective.
What do you mean by there's a meaning crisis that we have?
I mean, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think my understanding of it is a lot of young people right now living relatively decent lives compared to perhaps older generations.
Like easier lives.
Yeah. Relatively easier lives. But there's with the lack of struggle from a harder life, there's a gap that needs replacing, and I think a lot of people are struggling on how to replace that. So they might turn to different things, whether it's religion, whether it's vices, whether it's I don't know, it could be anything, but I think there's some sort of like hole that a lot of young people are looking to fill, and they don't know where to go to fill that. I think that's what I understand. What do you think the meaning crisis is, though?
No, I feel like it's a good question. I feel like it's an important topic right now because, first of all, I do feel like there's a meaning crisis, and I think where it comes from is that society has kind of drifted away from religion and like God being at the center of everyone's lives. And I feel like we always need something to fill that void. I think it's either religion or for some people it's patriotism, and I feel like that's why there's more like extreme political movements sort of like at the forefront of society now.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially I feel like what happened was people stopped prioritizing their faith as much in life, and I think it kind of makes sense because I think as we've made advances in science and like technology, it's kind of hard to like believe in faith as much anymore. I kind of feel like faith held more weight or had more of an influence in society when we couldn't answer as many questions. Because I do feel like there's this thing called like the God of the Gaps argument, where it's like we look to God and religion to fill that gap where there's questions that we can't really answer. And I just feel like we've answered more of those questions now, and as a result religion doesn't hold as much weight. But the problem is there's still some bigger, deeper questions about life around like meaning and stuff like that, which science hasn't been able to answer.
Yeah.
I don't know I wouldn't say science can't answer it. It hasn't really been able to give a great answer so far, but just because it hasn't answered it yet doesn't mean that it won't be able to answer it, if that makes sense. Or do you disagree?
I think there's some things that science won't ever be able to answer, and
I don't know if I agree with that.
I think there are, like, I don't think science will ever help you with an answer to the question of what happens after death. I think some things
not yet, because I feel like
I don't think it ever will.
I don't know. I feel like there's certain things that science has like answered that back in the day people thought wouldn't be able to be answered. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think there's definitely a limit. I think there's some things that, like, science has definitely advanced like dramatically over like the centuries, but I don't think that's exponential. It could be exponential, but I think there is a limit to what science can answer and what it can't.
Okay.
But going back to the meaning crisis, I think what like maybe older generations benefited from was a bit more structure or a bit more rigidity in their lives. And then where I guess we have a bit more freedom, there can be a lot of chaos that comes with that. Freedom of choice in terms of what you want to pursue out of life, what you want to become. That can cause a bit of chaos mentally in terms of understanding who you're supposed to be, understanding your calling. So I think that ties back to the meaning crisis. Back in the day where you either, I don't know, became like some sort of professional or you picked up a trade. I think now where there's like so many different things you can become, it kind of paralyzes you a little bit.
Is this like, what's that thing called? Like the problem of choice, or like basically talking about how like we struggle when we have too many options.
Yes. Yeah. I think freedom is good until a limit. I think too much freedom is actually a bit of a curse. Like, you can't really thrive. I think you need a bit of structure. You need a bit of, so going back to what you said about religion and faith, I think that provided a lot of structure and sort of a framework to live life that a lot of people in our generation now just don't have.
Yeah. So you feel like that structure is what provided the meaning, like
For
provided
sure.
meaning in people's lives?
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. No, it's actually good that you brought this up because I was actually going to stop the episode, but I feel like we might as well just continue because the next topic I wanted to talk about was like meaning and like purpose in life. So I kind of want to ask, like, what do you think is the meaning of life? And I know it's a big question, but
yeah, it's a very big question.
What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask that?
What's the meaning of life? To be honest, there isn't really a simple way to put this, but I think obviously it's going to be individual, or it's going to be dependent on the individual. But I think the meaning of life broadly is to understand why you're, like, what your purpose is, why you're put on earth in the first place, and trying to execute that to the best of your ability. So you're going to have like different things that you feel like you're called to do, and I think the meaning of life is creating or forging a pathway that you're able to execute those obligations to the best of your ability. So whether it's family, whether it's work, whether it's a passion that you think you're called to do, I think just thinking of a pathway to execute that, I think that's the meaning of life. I don't know.
So it's kind of like
it's about duty. It's about duty. It's about.
It sounds like a military campaign. Like,
yeah. I mean, I guess it does, but it ties back to what I said about too much freedom and too much freedom causing a bit of chaos. I think once you understand what your calling is, then that kind of dials you into a certain space where you're able to just focus on what you think you're supposed to do. And I think that like removes a lot of the chaos and noise of like wondering what it is you're supposed to do or wondering if you're on the right path.
Yeah. See, okay, so first of all, I'm just trying to summarize what you're saying. You feel like there is a meaning to life, and you feel like, you don't agree. You don't agree.
What do you mean by there's a meaning to life?
No, because you could have also said I don't think there is a meaning to life when I asked you.
No, I think life is meaningful inherently, but I think every life is different, if that makes sense. So it's very dependent on the individual.
Okay, so you still think there's a meaning to life, but it can be different for different people.
Yeah.
And for you, it's more around like duty and responsibilities and fulfilling those responsibilities.
Yeah. I think it's the pathway to understanding what you're even supposed to do,
what you're meant to,
and then figuring out how to do it.
Okay.
I think that's basically what life is about.
Why there's a meaning crisis is because people sort of like gone out of touch with religion, and that provided like a structural like framework for people to live.
Yeah.
But also now you're saying the meaning of life is to like follow your duties and responsibilities. First of all, work those out, how to do it, and then do it.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to understand a bit more about like where those duties and responsibilities come from. Does it come from religion, or is it something you create yourself?
To be honest, I'm not too sure. I think obviously if you're a religious person, then you might get some guidance from your religion in terms of where, like, what path you're supposed to go down.
Yeah.
But again, I think it is very subjective. I think I wouldn't say generally that it comes from religion.
Okay.
I would say it could come from a variety of different factors, or a variety. Like, it's a bit like nature and nurture. I think you're kind of born with something that you're better at doing than most other people. So it's, I guess, finding that, and then I guess finding the cross section between that and what you feel inspired to do, or what, like the mark that you feel you need to leave on the earth. I don't know.
Like, for me, that would suggest that like society kind of like straying from religion isn't really what's causing the meaning crisis then, because what you just talked about doesn't really sound like it has too much to do with religion.
I don't think it does necessarily, because I think people that aren't necessarily religious still are able to find meaning in life. They're still able to find their calling or duty, or what they think is their calling, and they're able to execute that. So I don't think religion is like the gateway towards a meaningful life necessarily. Interesting. Yeah.
Okay. I'm curious a bit more about like your specific like individual approach to this though.
Okay.
Like what would you say is like what provides meaning in your life? Also,
that's a deep question.
It is. And I find it interesting how like and I might be doing too much because maybe I just overthink about these things all the time, and most people don't. But like, is this something you think about on a regular basis, or is it not? Because I've noticed like when I ask these questions, it kind of like hits you a bit.
Yeah,
and you're not.
It's definitely not like it's not a thought that I think about frequently at all. In terms of what did you ask before?
What gives you meaning?
What gives me meaning in life? I think, damn, you have to think about it. I think it's like little moments when I realize that, moments where I realize that I am on the right path, or I'm doing what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. So whether that could be a lot of different things. So it could be building relationships with family, friends. It could be working on something, or reaching a certain milestone that I was looking forward to. I think there's a lot of different things that do provide meaning within my life. And yeah, like I said, it could come from a variety of different areas. I think the feeling that's common between all of them is like, I guess, feeling that what I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I feel that feeling. Yeah, like I said, whenever I'm like, it could be spending time with family, friends, work, a passion. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's interesting. Like, I just find it interesting, like hearing what gives other people meaning, because I do think it's a hard question to answer, but I also feel like a lot of people don't really think about it.
Yeah.
And from what I've heard from you, it's like there is like this specific like meaning you have ascribed to your life.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because like I said, it's not something that I think about constantly, I would say, but I think there are little moments where I'm like, this is what life is about.
That's what life's about.
Yeah.
So the reason why I'm trying to just like really drill down on that is because there are people that think there is no meaning to life. Like, we're just here and we're supposed to just
we're just on
exist.
a rock. We're on a floating rock.
Yeah, so I feel like you wouldn't agree with that. Correct me if I'm wrong. What do you think about that sort of approach to life, where you just go about and you don't really have to have any inherent meaning, and there is no this is what life is about? It's just, this is life. Just do it. Like, I've heard things online where people talk about like life is just getting from womb to tomb. Like, you're just born and you just die, and there doesn't have to be like this bigger picture to it.
I think even if that is the case, I don't think it's helpful. So I don't think you're gonna gain anything by adopting that sort of mindset.
Yeah.
Even if life is just all about going from womb to tomb, how does that help you? Like, what does that do for you, other than I don't know?
I mean, they would argue that it doesn't have to help you. Like, why do you have to come up with a meaning to help you? Like, why can't you just live and just exist? And apparently, like, some people would also suggest that, again, like, loads of people have different opinions on this, but some people would suggest that like it makes life easier because it's a bit more freeing. Like, it's a bit more, there's less like pressure. So if you do feel like it does have to help you, that's where they would argue it might help you.
But I think if you think life is meaningless, then I think that can bring like quite a bit of despair. Like, if I thought life was meaningless, then what's the reason to even live?
Do you know what? That's actually a good point to make, because I think that's an interesting segue into like nihilism. I'm guessing you know like what nihilism is.
Break it down for me, please, Mr. Philosopher.
Okay, I don't actually know. Again, I just think these words. I know the buzzwords, but I don't actually know the dictionary definition.
Amazing.
Yeah, but I feel like most of us in this day and age have a rough idea of what nihilism might be. Anyways, like, from my understanding, nihilism is like it's people that subscribe to this idea that there isn't an inherent meaning to life. Like, there's actually like, there's no meaning. And then there's different versions of nihilism. So there's like, I think there's optimistic nihilism, which talks about how like there's no meaning to life, and that's good because it frees you. And I can give examples of how that might work. For example, I feel like this is something I've actually tried to apply in my life at certain points. Let's see. So if like if something bad happens, let's say I lose my job or like
Yeah.
my girl breaks up with me. Yeah, let's say let's say that happens. Like, or yeah, like my relationship ends or something really significant to me like goes wrong or
Yeah.
terribly bad. You know, a lot of people, because they might have ascribed a lot of purpose and meaning to that thing in their life, will struggle to keep going because their whole worldview is now broken. But if you subscribe to this idea of nihilism, like there isn't meaning. Like I've heard some people say like, and I sometimes say this a lot to myself, like, we're just monkeys on a floating rock at the end of the day. When you kind of just take that step back and think like, well, it's not that deep anyways, because none of this matters, it kind of frees you to like do what you want. And I've noticed that's actually helped me at different points in life. Like it helps me do this podcast sometimes because it's like, I think a lot of people are scared to like go on social media, make content and stuff like that because they're already like, oh, what are people going to think of me and this and that. But you can basically just say like, well, it doesn't matter anyways.
Yeah.
Because like we're all going to die. And there's no bigger point to this.
There's like two sides to that effect though, because
Yeah.
it could have a positive effect where you're given like the courage to just pursue anything you feel like doing. But then I also think it can affect you in a way where, like I said before, like there's nothing means anything. So why do anything anyway? Like why try? Why bother to do anything? Because I'm gonna end up in a 2-man turn to dust. Like nothing, nothing matters. I think that's a dangerous mindset as well, because if everyone thought like that, then civilization wouldn't be half of where it is today.
Yeah, you're bringing up good points, and I feel like this is the thing with philosophy. There's always like there's a lot of like opposing arguments to these different ideas put out because what you're saying is valid and it's something that people argue about a lot. I think one way people have tried, like people that do like the idea of nihilism have tried to counter that is like, if you kind of like embrace this idea that there's no meaning, it also allows you to make up your own meaning. So they're saying, like some of these people say there is no inherent like objective meaning to life, but you can now, because there's nothing there, you can now make up your own meaning, if that makes sense. So
who can you give me an example? Like who's been able to do that successfully? Like
no, they would argue that's what we do. Like most of us do. So even the meaning that you gave, they would say that's not true. That's not factual. That's not an objective meaning. Like duty, responsibility.
Yeah, that's what I think.
That's what you think. But they would say you just made that up, though. If you like this episode, we're going to be doing more things like this. We're going to be talking about like philosophical concepts, trying to apply them to modern day situations. If that's the kind of stuff you want to be seeing, make sure to like, comment, subscribe and all of that stuff. Also, there's going to be a link in the description to a community I'm starting. It's a new online community where you guys can talk about conversations like this. Might even do live video calls as well. If that's something you're interested in, check that out as well. It's not true, but that's what you've chosen to like be your source of meaning.
Yeah, it's what I believe the meaning of life is.
Yeah.
I'm not quite
but
sure.
But also, basically, they're saying the freedom that comes with like still embodying this idea of nihilism is, let's say something happens down your life journey where that meaning isn't like as fulfilling, or it changes, or something goes wrong where it doesn't help you to subscribe to that meaning because it doesn't. Framework. You can just change it up. Yeah, you can just change it up whenever you want. And they're saying that's quite liberating. Essentially,
I don't know if it's liberating. I don't know if it is liberating, because like going back to the religion thing.
Yeah,
I think the one good thing about that framework is, like, for example, with Christianity, is very, once you subscribe to it, like the framework is kind of the framework. It doesn't really change, and no matter what you go through life with, you always have that like guide to, or like a North Star to follow, what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to respond to different things. So I think that gives a bit of peace. Like for example, a Christian, if something was still horribly wrong in their lives, they're not now going to think, oh, how do I change this framework? Because the framework is the framework.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like you fall into a trap now.
Can we take a quick pause though?
Yeah. Cool. Alright, I'll take a pause. We'll continue on his back. You ready?
Yes.
Done your makeup and everything?
Huh?
You done your makeup?
Yeah, I had a quick touch up stuff.
Cool. Anyways, I feel like we'll just get straight where were we? Yeah. Can't lie. I feel like you sort of played yourself there.
Okay, go on.
you gave Christianity as an example of how like you can't just be switching up. How
Is an example of a framework that is like kind of constant.
yeah, so that's where I feel like you're wrong.
Okay, go on.
Because- Anyway, this is just my opinion. I feel like Christianity has evolved so much over the years, which suggests that we kind of thrive over being able to like switch up our frameworks. Anyways, for like, there's a lot of things that that Christians did back in the day that you don't follow, and like a lot of Christians don't follow anymore.
But what does that have to do with if I'm a Christian today? The framework that I follow throughout my lifetime. What does what happened in the 1800s have to do with my lifetime?
Okay, good point. And I don't know if I think that's still quite relevant because the framework itself like was still like applicable back in the 1800s, but not applicable in the same way now. But regardless of that, I also still think even in your lifetime, the way you apply Christianity as a framework in your life is going to change. Or I don't know, would you disagree with that?
I think it might change, but I don't think it's the same sort of change as what you're talking about, like with the whole nihilistic viewpoint. I think if it changes, it's more of a case of if you're maturing within Christianity, then you might have like deeper understanding of like scripture or practices or just understanding how to navigate life through Christianity in a better way. So I think it's more of like advancing the current framework rather than changing the framework. So that's how I see it. I think if you're a Christian and your sort of framework for life is changing, I think more often than not is because you're understanding Christianity better or differently. Yeah, for example.
Cool.
So it's not quite the gotcha moment.
To be honest, I don't think
it is. Like,
that is quite similar to what some people might do with nihilism, where like they can choose to decide right now this is their meaning of life and this is the framework they use to approach life, but they might adapt it as they get more information as time goes on. We can leave that.
I don't think it's not dissimilar. Yeah.
Yeah. I still kind of want to get your opinion on some other like approaches or ideas of what the meaning of life is. One of them is like absurdism. I might be getting this wrong because I'm trying to be a philosopher right now, but I'm actually not yet.
Can only try.
But, we're getting there. So I think absurdism is like, I might be wrong, but it's this idea that life is inherently meaningless and there's a lot of suffering and stuff like that, but you can find meaning in the suffering. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on that. What do you think about suffering and accepting what they would call the absurd? Because apparently people suggest the amount of suffering in life is kind of absurd. What do you think about that as an approach to like life?
Sorry, I want to get like a definition because
actually now I've chatting shit.
I've never heard of that.
That's what I think it is along. Basically, in a nutshell, I'm paraphrasing, but yeah.
So absurdism is the philosophical thesis that life or the world in general is absurd.
Okay.
So there is a wide agreement that the term absurd implies a lack of meaning or purpose, but there is also a significant dispute concerning its exact definition, and various versions have been suggested. So absurd, I don't know, that's quite a broad term. I think life is quite strange when you think about it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's very strange.
I agree with that. And the examples I've seen is like, I've mainly seen people talk about from the angle of like, when they're referring to the absurd, they're referring to the amount of unnecessary suffering that a lot of us face in everyday life. Unnecessary
like what? Like what's unnecessary?
Or seemingly unnecessary suffering. Let me try to give examples. Like just bad things just happen. Like you're gonna get ill. You don't know how you're gonna get ill, but naturally you're gonna get ill. Or like you know what? You know what's a good example? Have you heard of like the myth of Sisyphus?
Yes.
Yeah.
The climb, like pushing the ball up the hill.
Pushing the ball up
for
the
eternity.
hill. Yeah. But it's like it comes back down. And
so you start. So you keep doing that for life.
And people think that's like a good sort of like metaphor for a lot of everyday life. Like we do our jobs, we try make money from these jobs, and it's like all these things we're trying to find fulfillment, but it doesn't really fulfill us. But we keep chasing these things. Like you know, you chase more money. But a lot of people suggest, a lot of rich, famous, successful people suggest when you have like all the money and the fame and stuff, like it still doesn't fill that void, and yet we still kind of just do it. So like we're pushing that boulder up the hill, but then it comes back down. There's always something again that we have to do, and it's like, why keep going? But I think the myth of Sisyphus tries to suggest that you can find happiness just in like the pursuit, like just be happy for the sake of rolling the boulder up the hill. Yeah.
I mean, you said a lot, but I think the way I look at the dilemma of Sisyphus in like, I guess, modern life is a lot of us might have like grown up with certain aspirations, or even if you didn't grow up with certain aspirations, you might just like see examples of people living like a certain type of lifestyle, or a certain type of lifestyle, and a certain type of lifestyle that you may not ever achieve in your whole lifespan. And I think for me, the Sisyphus dilemma is being able to still go about your like mundane daily duties. So going to work, showing up like for the things that you need to show up for, and kind of convincing yourself that that's sufficient for you to be happy or be content. Yeah. And I think so Sisyphus, he's pushing his boulder up the hill for eternity, and he's ended up convincing himself that he's deriving I guess, but yeah, he's sort of created, like, I don't know, he's tricked himself into finding purpose in pushing this boulder up the hill for eternity. Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of us do. So you might end up in a career that is very similar to just pushing up a boulder for eternity or for the rest of your career.
No, it's interesting the way you word it, because it's like you use the word he's tricked himself. Yeah. Do you feel like when people give meaning, we kind of are tricking ourselves into this idea like this is what the purpose of life is about? Even if like some of the things you've said is the purpose of life.
I think it's the better alternative. So I think tricking yourself sometimes is better than being too aware of like the reality of things. So if you're able to trick yourself that like performing what you need to do, or fulfilling your duties, so whether it's you need to work a certain type of job so that you can feed your kids, I think tricking yourself or convincing yourself mentally that this is my purpose and I'm going to be happy doing this is more useful to you in the long run than like whinging and complaining and whining that you're not living like, you know, you're not running in the fields compared to pushing your boulder. Sometimes you just need to push your boulder and like I said, trick yourself that this is the great stuff.
Bringing this back to religion though, this makes me want to ask, do you think when people ascribe a lot of meaning to religion, in a way they're kind of tricking themselves when they say this is what life's about, this is the truth, all of that?
Why do you say that?
Because you basically just said like we the way we provide meaning in our lives is by tricking ourselves that this is what life's about. That's what I
think the difference with religion is that it's faith based. So I wouldn't necessarily use the words tricking yourself, because you have faith in something without having the proof. But I think it's slightly different to the Sisyphus dilemma, because I would say with Sisyphus, he doesn't have faith that what he's doing is meaningful and is making him happy. I think he just...
I feel like he does.
No, I wouldn't say I wouldn't use the word faith.
It depends how you define faith, because I just see faith as like you don't know whether this is true or the case, but you choose to.
But you believe it as if it's true.
Yeah, and I think that's what Sisyphus is doing. Like he doesn't know whether pushing that boulder up the hill is actually meaningful, but at some point he chooses to believe that's the case.
No, but I think it's a different type of belief. If that even exists, I think the reason why it's different is because with Sisyphus, I think he starts off being aware that this is like basically a death sentence. This isn't meaningful inherently, but I think he understands that it's useful to have like a shift in perspective. I think it's more about a difference in perspective. Like pushing this boulder up, if you look at it objectively, is not meaningful, but if the only way to, I think it's more of like a survival mechanism. Like the way to survive this is to make it meaningful. Yeah. Because otherwise, I'll die of boredom or I'll die of lack of meaning.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a resistance to I can't remember where how the story came about. I'm not sure if it was a punishment or something.
Yeah, I think he was punished by the god.
Yeah,
for, like giving.
So I think it's a resistance. I think Alex O'Connor actually touched on this. I think it's like a resistance to that punishment. So,
yeah. But I think that's what we kind of do with religion, though.
How
I think
how
it's
is
a survival
religion? How is
mechanism.
but how do you see religion as a resistance to some sort of punishment or some?
This is a very interesting, like, aspect of the conversation that you're opening up, because it depends where you're at in your religious journey. So just being a bit more pretty transparent, like I'm someone at a stage in my life where I question religion more, and I think once you cross that line where you question your religion, your faith more, it's easier to now see it as a survival mechanism or something that you convince yourself of being the case. Because if you start to really acknowledge that, this might not be true, then you start to think about, but why did I believe it for so long? And why does so many people in the world believe it? And then when I started doing that, I saw a lot of like hardcore atheists explaining or suggesting that religion is a survival mechanism. Apparently, they would even argue that religion is an evolutionary byproduct. So the people that were able to say that there's this higher power and like all this like higher like supernatural
like
stuff going on, yeah, and that's what this life's about. Those people were able to like keep going and surviving against all the odds, like that you naturally life has to go up against. Like if you think about back in the day, it depends what you believe about evolution. It's like we were being hunted by like other predators. There wasn't necessarily like easy access to like food and shelter and stuff like that, and we didn't have science, or science wasn't as developed as it is now, so we couldn't answer a lot of questions like why are we, well, we still can't answer why we're here, not necessarily, and like we didn't really know like how everything works, like what is that big bright yellow light in the sky, like the sun, why do our loved ones die and stuff like that. And they would argue that the earlier humans that were able to create this sort of narrative, which we kind of refer to as religion now, that sort of like makes you feel like it connects the dots, it connects the strings, it makes you feel like this all kind of makes sense in a way. Like when they die, this is what happens, you're going to see them again, this and that. That
like
helps you survive. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe. Check out our online school community. There's going to be a link in the description down below. Other than that, thanks for watching. It's a way to explain these
weird things in life.
Yeah. And that's why some people suggest religion is a survival mechanism or like a cope or something like that.
I can understand it being a cope. I actually do understand it being a form of cope, because like you said, life is very brutal and life is very strange in of itself. So where we can't provide explanations for these things that go on in life, it is easier to just have religion or some sort of something to fall back on that provides like a sweeping explanation for things that you can't really comprehend fully.
Yeah.
But I think, again, I still think it's different to the sort of cope that Sisyphus was going through. I think, I'm not sure, but I think Sisyphus is more conscious of his cope. I think, I don't know, now that you say, I'm seeing more similarities.
Yeah, because I feel like
I'm seeing more similarities.
Why you might think is very different from what Sisyphus was doing is because you're focusing too much on the specifics of that situation, like him just rolling the boulder up the hill. But I think people
it's an analogy,
it's more of an analogy to represent what we do in everyday life. Like we do things and we don't necessarily, if we go down the chain of why we do them, we don't necessarily know for 100% certainty why we do them, but we kind of find a way to tell ourselves this is why. We create that storyline or that narrative, and for a lot of people that storyline is their religion or their faith. That's like the bigger end goal, like overarching picture, like maybe to
that's like a means to push the boulder up and be happy
keep pushing the boulder even though it keeps like coming back down.
You know what, I think I do. I see where you're coming from with that. I see where you're coming from.
We got him in the end, guys. But yeah, this kind of links to the next episode I wanted to film, which I think we're just going to keep talking about now.
Okay.
So yeah, next episode is technically our Christmas New Year special. And since we're talking about religion and Christianity, let's talk about the resurrection. I don't know how much you know about the resurrection in the Bible. Like, I think everyone knows the basic gist of the resurrection. Like, Jesus died. Wait, that's not even why we celebrate. That's Easter, isn't it?
Yeah, resurrection is Easter. Yeah.
Damn. Oh, we're gonna talk about it anyways. I feel like Christmas is still a good time to talk about that.
Christmas is the birth. If that
Christmas
helps.
is the birth.
Yeah.
No, I'm still kind of Christian. I still remember that.
I need to go back to activity.
Damn. Anyways, we'll get back to the birth, but let's talk about the resurrection because I think that's a more interesting topic.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know what? Basically, what I want to test you is, would you say you're a Christian, right?
Yeah.
Cool. How are you so sure that Jesus rose from the dead?